Hello, I'm Morgan Bruce. I just completed a 20-hour internship at Waverly Middle School. While I was there, I worked in a 7th grade English classroom. Within the class, I worked with 2 focus students. To protect the privacy of these students, I'm going to use pseudonyms to make it easier to tell their stories. With these students, I helped with various homework assignments. The first student is a 7th grade girl named Amy. Amy is a student that is very interested in learning and works hard in the classroom for the grades that she has. Amy struggles with reading and writing and has many speech problems. As a young child, she was put in Sylvan Learning Program to better her phonetics and reading abilities. Amy's biggest pitfall is that she thinks she is not as smart as her other classmates. Her speech problems have put her in a position where she struggles socially. Judging by many interactions with Amy, she has had some experience with being bullied as well, but I will get into that later. My second student was a 7th grade boy named James. James was a very different student than Amy. He had a difficult time staying motivated in the classroom. This had a lot to do with the traumatic loss of his father less than 3 months prior. His troubles in class connected directly with the loss of his father, but I was able to connect with James through sports. Just judging by my interactions with James, he used sports as his main outlet to take his mind off of things. I think that our conversations about basketball, football, and baseball came as a relief to him. I could tell that he was nervous to interact with me, and I assume it was because he thought I was going to ask him questions about his father. However, that is just an assumption based off the reaction of relief I got from him when I explained to him that the interview questions I was going to ask consisted of nothing more than his interactions with reading and writing in and out of the classroom. As I'm sure you can tell from my previous statements, these students brought very different experiences with them into the classroom. Not only did I see this in the verbal interactions I had with my students, but in the main assignment that I worked with them on. The assignment I was tasked with assisting my students with was an argumentative essay. I was able to carefully observe both students while working on this essay with them. They both approached the essay very differently. To give a little bit of background about the assignment, images of the packet that was handed out to the students will be shown as I describe the requirements. The students were required to type a 6-paragraph essay about a controversial topic that they took a strong stance on. The essay had to have an introduction with a hook sentence to draw the readers in, a clear thesis, 4 body paragraphs with factual evidence and explanations as to why others should also take the stance they took on their controversial topic. Within the second 2 body paragraphs, the students were required to make counterclaims and then explain why the pros outweighed the cons in the scenarios. Lastly, the students had to have a conclusion that restated the thesis and the body paragraphs in a clear and concise way. Throughout the essay, the students had to have minimal grammar mistakes, correct use of transitional words and phrases, and 3 or more resources to back up their claims. The teacher provided the students with a packet that outlined exactly what needed to be included in the essay as a literacy strategy by using boxes that explained what had to go into each paragraph. If utilized, the students were able to write in the boxes that were provided and, at the end, type up everything they had written and have their essay completely done without having any doubts of whether or not they did it correctly. Both students approached the essay differently. They also had very different levels of interest in the assignment. Amy spent a lot of time on her assignment. She used the packet given to her by the teacher and went step by step through it to complete everything she needed to. She carefully picked out a topic she felt strongly about. I could tell that the topic she picked was very near to her heart. Her essay was about the benefits of enforcing stricter dress codes or school uniforms in schools. She wrote passionately about how bullying on appearance affects many students nationwide and how school uniforms can help reduce bullying. From the interview session I had with Amy, I could tell that her concerns stemmed from experiences that she personally had in her time in school. As I mentioned previously, Amy struggled with her self-confidence and often compared herself to her peers. Although her essay was handed in late, it was complete with counterclaims, detailed research and explanations, and proper citations when she handed it in. However, Amy struggled a lot with research. She was never really sure where to start, and she also had a lot of trouble knowing just what to put in the search engine. Because Amy is a very eager learner, I was able to take a direct approach on teaching her how to properly research. I gave Amy a crash course on how to use a search engine by using certain keywords rather than typing in a whole question and identifying scholarly sources. I was surprised over and over again at how quickly Amy caught on to what was taught to her. Her lack of confidence in the classroom never actually hindered her quick ability to learn and catch on to what she was taught. Amy performed well in a one-on-one setting because she didn't have to worry about not being as good as her peers. In our individual interview, she told me she doesn't like asking her peers for help because she doesn't want to be made fun of. This deeply saddened me because as literacy learners, some of our biggest assets are our peers, and lacking the confidence to turn to a peer for confirmation takes away a large aspect of learning. James took a different approach to the assignment. He was not nearly as interested in the assignment as Amy was. I'm not sure if it was because he chose a topic he had a difficult time writing about, or if it was because he had other things on his mind, or even a culmination of both, but he was not nearly as interested in the research as Amy was. James's topic was an argument about why it is important for student athletes to get good grades. After choosing his topic, he didn't want to do any research that was required of him. He wanted to write the paper based off of what he already knew. He also struggled coming up with counterclaims to make his argument stronger. The more I helped James, the less he seemed to want to do his own work. I realized that James thought my job was to write his paper for him. I had to devise a plan to make it clear to him that it was in fact not my job to write this paper without calling him out on wanting me to do his work for him. To accomplish this, I had to step back and make a list of reasons why James was struggling with this assignment. The list included lack of motivation, lack of interest, poor writing skills, and poor typing skills. To get through the essay, I had to tackle each of the reasons one at a time. The question was, how? That's when I decided to utilize the individual interview I had with James to see if I could stimulate motivation and interest. In the interview, James said he really liked reading and writing about sports statistics. I decided to introduce the idea of backing up his argument with statistics that were not that different than the ones the athletes had on the court or field. We started off with Stephen Curry and found out his high school GPA, and from there, James really took off. He became excited about knowing these new stats about athletes he admired so much already. Because of the way I introduced the approach he took to his essay, James was interested in actually learning the steps it took to write his paper. A literary strategy I used to teach James was to relate what he was learning to something he was already interested in, so that he would be more motivated and more excited about learning how to do the actual assignment. Switching gears a little bit here, I'm going to talk about the work my students turned into their teacher. Not only did I get to assist, check out, and grade their argumentative essays, I got to view other samples of classwork that the students completed this semester. Because I was able to compare the old assignments with the argumentative essays the students handed in, I got a better look at what kind of students my focus students were. When I was working with my students on their argumentative essays, I noticed that they really struggled with grammar. That really showed up on the other classwork of theirs that I examined. I asked my mentor teacher about how she graded grammar, and she said that she doesn't really worry about it because at this age, she just wants to make sure her students are comfortable with writing. She thought that grading harshly on grammar discouraged students from letting their creativity flow. While I agree with that, I feel as if there was some sort of happy medium that could have been reached rather than the work that her students handed in. The students' lack of grammar hindered their writing along with my ability to even understand what they were writing. When I was first handed the classwork that I was to examine, I really tore into them, as you will be able to see from their work samples I have pictured in this video. I plucked out every error I could find, every comprehension flaw, every mistake the text had to offer. I noticed that I didn't write anything good the entire time I was doing so. I think that this exercise taught me a lot as a future educator because I realized how important it was to focus on being positive to my students, rather than just wanting to shake them and say, "You dummy, have you ever heard of punctuation?" So, I went back through both assignments with a different outlook. I focused on all of the good the students did. I noticed different things in both assignments. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see the same assignment for both students, so there was a little bit of a variable going into this endeavor. I'll go on to each assignment individually a little bit, starting with James. James's assignment was a blog post that all of the students had to complete about a favorite memory. James managed to somehow make his into all one sentence. His grammar was so poor that I could hardly understand what he was trying to say half of the time. To me, I think that because the students know they aren't being graded on their grammar skills, they rush through the assignment and don't double check what they wrote. When I went back through the second time looking for positive things, I realized James was really excited about writing this piece. It was about the MSU versus U of M football game this past fall, and the amount of emotion he put into the piece really overtook me. I felt really guilty that that was not the first thing I had noticed. His grammar really hindered my understanding of the piece, and it took away from the actual emotion that went into his work. I wonder if there is a balance that could have been reached by the teacher. Maybe correcting the grammar without marking points off so the students are aware of the grammar mistakes they are making. That could be a positive approach to this issue. I think it is necessary because students struggled immensely with basic punctuation and knowing when to capitalize a proper noun. In the interview with James, we talked about what could make him a better writer, and he didn't think that there was anything he had to improve on. I wonder if this was actually something he believed in, or if he was being ingenuine in the interview. I made the suggestion that there was always something a person could do to improve on writing skills, no matter how great they were at writing. And as someone who said he enjoyed writing, I hope those words resonated with James. Between the interview and the analysis of the assignment, I learned that James's approach to his work is that he puts his feelings into his work, but doesn't really care about the actual assignment that much. I think it is important to recognize that James only enjoys the assignments that relate to him. I think that if I were to have seen James's version of the assignment that Amy did, I think that I would have gotten an emotionless paper filled with mumbo-jumbo. Also, seeing that I assisted with and graded the argumentative essay that James completed, I think it is safe to say that his approach to any assignment that he isn't interested in is simple. If he can't relate to it, he won't put in the time needed to hand in quality work. When I introduced the essay to him in terms he could relate to, James was able to complete it with no qualms. I think that this taught me that it is important for students to understand what they are doing is important. Amy's assignment was a compare and contrast worksheet between two short stories the students read as a class. Again, my initial reaction to the assignment was to tear it up grammar-wise. I also have read both of the short stories that were in the assignment, and she didn't really do all that was required of her. There was a similarities and differences chart that Amy didn't spend any time on. She was supposed to give several examples about how both stories were similar and different, and she only wrote one example for each section of the chart. I don't think that Amy put a lot of effort into this assignment. I think that she had some comprehension issues with the readings because of the lack of answers and descriptions she gave. She also did not follow the directions on the worksheet at all. The assignment was to respond to the questions in essay form, and she did exactly what the directions said not to do. Amy's approach to assignments is that she is very reluctant. She lacks a lot of confidence in herself and thinks that she is behind her peers. I think the reason she did such a rushed job on her assignment was because she wanted to work at the same pace as her peers. She does a lot of comparing herself to other people. She works at a slower pace than everyone else, but that does not mean she is not as smart as them. I think that a student like Amy could really benefit with flexible due dates. I think that flexible due dates, however, try to fine line between singling students out and making them feel lesser than their peers and actually helping them in their work. As a future teacher, I have thought a lot about this concept for some time now, and I'm not sure the true solution to it. It is definitely a strategy that I will have to think about, but seeing the way Amy worked in class really helped me understand the importance of it. In general, two things that I learned from my time at Waverly Middle School are the best ways to teach content is to help the student feel like what they are doing matters and to nurture the student's confidence when it comes to their abilities of performing in the classroom. My literacy learners taught me a lot about the kind of teacher I want to be. From them, I learned that it is important to find as many positive attributes about the student's work and abilities in and out of the classroom before the negatives are even acknowledged. I also learned how important it is to connect with your students because when they understand how much you care, they are more likely to put in more effort. In conclusion, my focus students taught me so much about what I need to do to better myself as a future educator. Connecting with them and showing I care about their education and well-being, even if we aren't alike in any way, shape, or form, just might be the most important thing there is to giving a student a quality education.